Welcome, listeners, to A Writer's Life. I'm your host, Heike Bohm, the author of the novel Secrets in the Shadows. A Writer's Life is a place where I'll be in conversation with fellow writers. We'll discuss all things writing. They'll read from their latest works, and we'll explore what happens beyond the pen in A Writer's Life. It's gonna be a page turner. I just know it. Pull up a chair and join us. I'm recording on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation.
I think underneath I felt a little bit shackled because I couldn't be as creative as I wanted to be. And I saw these tangents that were not true, but really interesting ways to go. Like, what if this story ended with so it inspired me, but not in ways that I could legitimately express in the jobs that I was doing.
Today, I'm enchanted to be in conversation with Katherine Fawcett, who is a Squamish-based author. Her latest book, The Swan Suit, published by Douglas and McIntyre 2020, was a finalist for the ReLit Award. She also authored The Little Washer of Sorrows, published by Thisaldown Press 2015, which was shortlisted for both the Sunburst Award and the ReLit and Whistler Bear Story 2010. When not writing, Fawcett enjoys biking, hiking, running, and skiing the trails in the Whistler Squamish area. She's also a music teacher, a member of the Sea to Sky Orchestra, and a keen gardener who says that pretty much all the kale she planted this year has been eaten by the birds. Welcome, Katherine, to A Writer's Life.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to be talking to you. I have listened to some of your stories, and I have to say, they're really wonderful and great.
Thanks. I'm glad you like them.
So I'm just going to ask you a question that I ask everyone. Sure. Where were you born, and what was it like around your dinner table when you were growing up?
I was born in Montreal, Quebec, but I didn't live there long enough to consider myself true Quebecois. I mostly grew up in Calgary, and being the oldest of five, dinner was pretty crazy in my house, but always in a really happy and loving way. I can just remember kind of having to fight for my food and to get a word in edgewise. There were always stories and jokes, and things kind of flew. It felt like it's a bit of a blur, but always in happy colors. So yeah, that was my dining room table growing up.
I love it. What were your favorite books when you were in elementary school that you liked to read?
Oh, I loved in elementary school the classics for my age group. I mean, there wasn't really YA at that time, way back, but I would have read A Wrinkle in Time is a classic, Beverly Cleary, that kind of stuff. But really, what I was drawn to, aside from those types of appropriate books, I was really into Stephen King when I was little. I was really into Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, and Mad Magazine. Those were like my three. So I gobbled up stuff like that.
Do you find that your early readings influenced your writing?
Yep, totally. I still love Stephen King. His short stories especially. I think he's just brilliant. As a young reader, I was in awe of that kind of power that an author had to transport the reader to a new place. And wherever I was, whether I was hiding away from my brothers and sisters, or whether I was sitting and tucked into a sand dune at my grandparents' cottage in Lake Winnipeg, I got a lot of reading done, and it was a great, not escape. It wasn't like I had a wonderful childhood, and I wasn't trying to get away from anything, but just travel. I could time travel and mind travel into someone else's life and give myself a little thrill and a scare at the same time. And yeah,
nice.
That was reading for me.
Nice. I remember reading Mad Magazine as a kid.
Classic, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then folding in the back page, to see what it there was just, do you remember that when you had to fold in thirds and then they would meet? It was like,
Yes.
there's the punchline when you fold it in the back. Spy versus spy. Loved that, Meg. It's so clever.
Oh, that's so good. I totally forgot about that, actually.
That really wasn't your question. That's not exactly a novel, but I did really look forward to Mad Meg.
It was reading.
Totally.
Counts. Yeah. You were a sports reporter. What inspired that?
Oh my God. I was a sports reporter because not because I chose to be a sports reporter, but because I did choose to work at a community newspaper. And that's where they dumped me. I knew nothing about sports. I was the worst. I was the worst sports reporter. I would go to hockey games to report on these hockey games and I have no clue. Maybe that's where my fiction came from, because I really had no clue what I was writing about. I was replaced by a 13-year-old because this kid was an actual hockey player, and he understood the game and he had some literary skills. So they were like, "Oh, Catherine, you're off of that. Can you be on?" So I was put on the supplements, and I would write, advertorials, which were a lot of fun. But it's just, it's just a paid my sports reporting didn't last long. I think I put it in my bio because it sounds really cool, but I was not what I was any good at.
Sounds like you would have really gained the skills of digging deeper, not just keeping things on the surface.
Maybe it was being a sports reporter that get my confidence in being a fiction writer, because if you can, because I'm exaggerating a little bit. Yeah, hockey was bad, but I did write about a lot of the mountain biking sports and a lot of the other things. And you have to do some research to figure out, okay, where am I going to start here? And how am I going to approach this and make it interesting and yet accurate, so that the people who do know what they're talking about are not going to, I can give them some information as well.
And hold their interest.
And maybe entice some readers who are more like me, kind of like a lay observer of these sports. But if I can get in and find out about it and then find a more interesting angle. And I think probably thinking back, the most interesting sports story or feature that I ever wrote was Special Olympics came to Canmore. This was in Canmore. And I got to spend the week with some of those athletes, and their stories were beautiful and interesting and inspiring, and so much more than just sports stories.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that.
Then you ventured into freelance journalism. What was that like for you?
Well, that was a nice way to make some money, but it wasn't always the most interesting writing. Freelancing, it gave me discipline, that's for sure, because it was, this is your length and this is your deadline. Do it. And this is what we're looking for. So that was good. I freelanced for some places that I had, again, I freelanced for Tracks and Treads magazine. Oh. And so this is the magazine it was published by Finning. So it was lots of heavy equipment related articles, just like weird stuff. I knew all about the dozers and the backhoes and all the big heavy duty industrial equipment. So those kind of jobs, though, are quite lucrative. So that was fun. It's fun to get paid for what you're doing. I did start exploring more of themes and stories that I was interested in, and wrote for some it was such a long time ago. I did write some travel stories for some newspapers. I wrote some foodie stuff and some outdoor activities stuff. Oh, and I worked in Yellowknife. And wrote for Up Here magazine. That was really interesting to do some stuff for up north. Yeah.
A lot of the writing you did earlier would have, and did it inspire how you approach your writing style now, even of word
Probably
choice?
In a way, because I think writing freelance or for community newspapers, or, the stuff I was doing before, it inspired me in a way that I think underneath I felt a little bit shackled, because I couldn't be as creative as I wanted to be. And I saw these tangents that were not true, but really interesting ways to go. What if this story ended with, so it inspired me, but not in ways that I could legitimately express in the jobs that I was doing. So that's perhaps what inspired me to go, you know what, screw it. I'm going to just have to write this story on my own, in my own way, and write it as fiction. Even though I didn't ever see myself as a fiction writer, I thought that was beyond me, actually. I thought this,
Oh, wow.
no, I can't actually make this up. I have to have the guideline and the framework of an assignment or a pitch, something that people are going to read that comes from true life, not just pulled from the imagination. But as I'm writing these stories, freelance and other reporter stories, I was learning to write and seeing that there was further that it was possible to go. So it opened up some possibilities, but I still had to keep my language and my ideas true to life and not, you can't really dig into the poetry quite as much as I'd like to.
What was your first piece of fiction that you had published, and who published it?
My first piece of fiction that I had published actually was a creative nonfiction piece, and it was the winner of Event Magazine's creative nonfiction contest. It was called Asleep at the Wheel.
Nice.
It was mostly true, but not entirely. I also had a piece published in the Federation of BC Writers called magazine WordWorks. And from there, I began entering more and more contests, just writing these short stories on my own, thinking, well, let's see if other people like this, and started sending them off. Had some stuff published in a subterrane called Lunch Date that was eventually published in the Little Washer of Sorrows. So yeah, entering contests and having my work published in magazines was totally instrumental in giving me the confidence to keep going, and also in helping me collect enough stories to create a book.
Nice. Did you always know you wanted to be a writer?
I think I did. I think I always did know that I wanted to be a writer. I just didn't have the balls to go for it in the way that I was true to me. But I can remember being like 6 and 7 years old, making up plays at Christmas time that my friends and I would put on. And I'm like, I'll be the script writer. You guys be the actor. And writing, but like I would run out of money and want to give my friends birthday presents. And if I couldn't afford to buy them anything, I would write them poetry or little stories. Yeah. So I think I always knew that my backup was going to be writing.
Nice. You're also a music teacher and are in the Sea to Sky Orchestra. Does the music you listen to and play find its way into your writing, as in rhythm of your word choices? And does it influence your writing style?
That's a good question. I suppose it does, not really consciously. As a musician, you can't really help but being aware of rhythm and cadence, language, and just the way what we hear and internalize can tug on the heart. Whether it's words or music, right? We still transports us to a place. Yes. I guess, yes, but not consciously. I do a couple of forms of music. My teaching is in schools. I teach group violin lessons in part-time in Squamish and part-time in Whistler. And I'm working with students who are from grade 4 to grade 7. And students influence my writing. The students I work with, because they're just wonderful. And they're so lovely at that age, and they're going through it's such a transitional time. Like I'm teaching them through puberty basically, or coming upon so the grade 4s who I begin with, and the grade 7s when they leave me in grade 8, are people who've gone through such a journey, and if music can help them through that journey, then I'm delighted. That's my goal, is to give them some joy and a bit of an escape, which is really what reading does as well. And I love storytelling in my classes, a lot of storytelling in teaching and in engaging the students. I also I do private piano lessons as well. So, and I engage with the students that way more. Obviously, that's just a one-on-one thing. But I've recently become really interested in fiddle music. So, and the fiddle style is it's an oral storytelling tradition that really engages person to person, rather than in the classical world, it's person to sheet music to person. So I find the fiddle style very direct and immediate, and I like to transfer that to my writing style. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Completely. It's actually really, really fascinating to think about, because like for me, I don't really hear songs. I see imagery when I write, so I write what I see. And I always think it's interesting with musicians, you hear the songs, the melodies. And so I think, how does that influence your writing? Because do you hear all the dialogue? Do you hear the background noises of the train or the airplanes? Because you're so trained in hearing.
That's interesting. And I'm happy you said that your writing starts from imagery, because mine does too. Totally starts from imagery, not necessarily a certain plot or a certain character, although that's huge elements of that, but quite often it's an image and a feeling. And I'm right now going back to the music. I'm this summer, I've got a summer project for myself to write a collection of fiddle music. And the music that I'm writing is all based on the names of mountain bike and ski trails in the Whistler Squamish area, because they're so cool. Like the names of the trails around here: Toads of the Short Forest, and where's Joe, and gee, I like your pants, and man boobs. Like, names of the trails to me are such strong images. And I think hearing the name of the trails, riding or hiking or running them, and exploring that way is really musical. So writing music that's based on the names of the trails and the type of trail it is, but it's all image based. They could easily be short stories.
I'm waiting for those.
Maybe that'll happen as well. Hopefully, maybe. I don't know.
I love it. Swan Suit fairy tales turned on their heads, and they're geared mostly towards adults. What about that form of storytelling speaks to you?
I guess I like that there is an element of familiarity in the use of fairy tale tropes and themes. Like, we are familiar with the hero's quest and the transformation that often occurs in magical ways, but ways we also recognize as perhaps happening within our own bodies and selves and lives. So I like to flip that, the fairy tale theme, and bring it into people's contemporary realities. And also because it's so fun to have those characters that I don't have to explain what a troll is. I'm not going to have to go into detail of what a witch or a wolf or a swan in a fairy tale represents. You just know. So then there's more freedom to have some fun with those ideas. And nice. I was inspired. I didn't always, it's not like I'm like, oh, I haven't studied, people study fairy tales in depth and, write doctoral theses on them. And I'm not that person. I enjoy them, and I often read them and explore them and think about them. But really it's authors like Angela Carter and The Bloody Chamber, or there's a book edited by Kate Bernheimer called My Mother, She Killed Me, My Father, He Ate Me. I know. Right? So good. And it's full of authors who use fairy tales as a base and explore possibilities of whether it's horror or romance or whatever it is. A lot of horror, but also humor too. And anyways, that was a good, that kind of stuff really inspired me to be like, oh, I can use these traditional fairy tales.
Yeah.
And in the first book, I was using a lot of more of mythology. There's some Greek myths and Irish myths. Yep. So, but yeah, I think it's they're great starting points, really fun starting points.
It's interesting. I didn't grow up with fairy tales. I had one fairy tale. Really, I grew up with 3 books, and that was as a kid. But one of the stories, and I'm German, and so one of the stories that I always really liked were, written in the 1800s, I believe, Struppelpeter. And so in it was these limericks, and it was, it's the girl playing with the matches. If you played with matches, you would catch fire. So then there's a picture of her catching fire. And growing up, those were my fairy tales in a way. And I found humor in it, but they also taught a lot of lessons, but thought of as that they're dark. I never thought of them as dark. And I think because of that early readings, it changed or imbued a certain kind of way of how I look at all of a sudden the fairy tales when I came to Canada, the pretty princess, and I didn't relate to them at all. To me, it was just like, what's going on? It's so different. So it's really nice to hear somebody writing fairy tales with that macabre and darkness and also a sense of humor and the absurd, which your book, your stories in it, the fairy tales, really lean towards that kind of writing.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally fairy tales just horrifying, graphically violent and awful, and they really weren't intended for children. There's been a Disneyification of so much,
yes,
which isn't always bad, because I wouldn't have probably read my kids stories about fathers hacking up their children and pieces of children growing up and turning into other whatever. There's some horrible stuff.
I think that a lot of the dark fairy tales here, I found the little book.
Oh yeah,
if you can see, so I'm holding up a book and of the girl playing with matches and she catches fire and the cats.
Yeah, she's on here.
So these were my earliest memories of stories, but I think it reading that kind of darkness as a kid, I never found it traumatizing. It taught lessons to you, but it also, I think, prepared you for reality of the world. It didn't cushion it. It didn't make it pretty and pink. Mm-hmm. You knew that there was softness and kindness, but you also knew that if you did one thing, it would lead to something bad. It teaches you.
So I think that we protect children a little bit too much from stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that they should go and see, a Wes Craven movie, but having parents read stories that involve, okay, well, this giant chopped the thing in half, and then one half became kids are not going to think, oh, I'm going to get chopped in half, because they are just using their imaginations. Mm-hmm. They can go there. They can go there. And I don't think everything needs to be beautified for them.
Yeah, very true. When I was listening to you on YouTube, when you were doing your book launch, you say in your book launch that you realized that you had a common theme running through the short story collection. Can you talk about that common theme?
Yes, and I did not realize this common theme until I was trying to pitch it. And they were like, what's the common theme? Oh, I don't know. I just wrote stories. I really was not intending a thematically cohesive body of work. It just kind of happened. And the theme is really that I notice comes through quite strongly is transformation. And transformation, and the fact that what is our outer layer compared to our inner layer may not be in sync. Perhaps what we're presenting to the world is something different than what's inside, and is what's inside. Sometimes what's inside comes out, and that's the transformation, or sometimes it's elements from the outside that exposes a new you or a new character. So most of this, I think that the stories in there reveal transformation of some kind.
Mm. Mm. Are you aware at all what triggered to write about transformation?
Oh yeah. Probably, like turning 50.
Yeah, there's a big transformation that happened.
No, maybe looking in the mirror. Holy, what happened? Mortality, for sure. My father passed away recently, and
sorry to hear that.
It's seeing his relatively quick, he went from vibrant and healthy, and it's this, we change so much all the time. We are not who we think we are, and we are not who others think we are either. What's inside of me is nowhere near who we present. How I present, that may not be who I truly am. Well, who am I then? These questions come up, and as your children grow and you see them, I still see them as 7 and 10 years old, and one lives with his girlfriend now, and one's off to university. It's like, who are these people? It's really interesting. It's just really interesting, I find. So those kind of themes came out in the story, and self-discovery through mortality and the lens of growth, change, and discovery, self-discovery.
You say you like to lean on traditional characters' forms. When you say that, for me, what springs to mind is characters that are not complex. But when I hear your stories, they are layered in meaning. The stories have elements of complexity about them. Can you elaborate how you use traditional characters in your work and give them depth?
Okay. Well, I guess the example that springs to mind would be in the book The Swan Suit. I have 3 stories. Most of the stories are not related, except for 3 of them. 3 of them feature the same witch character, and I explore motherhood in witches. So yes, totally traditional character. In the 3 different stories, I'm exploring childbirth and the different ways that how would a witch become a mother and what would she be like, and then her midlife and her search for companionship in an animal, and then her death, and then her daughter coming to terms with her relationship and perhaps her genetic destiny with her mother. So yeah, they're complex, but because it's a witch and we already have our simple vision of a witch, we jump there and then dig in. I don't have to explain to anybody what a witch is.
Yes.
We have these visions, but then it's like, okay, let's unpeel that simplistic idea of the witch while still maintaining a bit of a fairy tale form and bringing it into contemporary.
You actually take the traditional idea of a witch and you imbued human emotions, real human emotions about motherhood into her. And so you're actually reinventing, in a way, retelling a story of what a witch is as well. That's what I found when I was listening that particular story. I was quite taken at, wow, that's actually a really interesting way of viewing and giving a new layer to her, a deeper layer, instead of just that stereotyping. And I guess that sort of goes to how we stereotype women as well, of how they should be, how they should feel. And you do it so nicely with humor as well.
See, this is why I like talking to people like you, because you're seeing all this stuff and layers and depth. And to be honest, I don't like write going, oh, I'm going to just make this. How deep can I go?
Yeah.
How can I make this? It's just for me, sometimes it's just getting the story out and then tweak, edit. And then when I reread it, it's like, this has revealed something. And then I know that it's going to maybe stand up as a good story, but it's something that the characters and the plot kind of takes over.
Well, I guess it's almost like the character that you use. So we're just talking about the witch right now. You're taking her, but really, until you finish writing what it isn't really about that particular character.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your own life experience or the life experience of a woman, that the witch or the character is really the vessel that holds those ideas and those thoughts of the visual of what you're feeling, what you see.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really fun in some of those traditional stories to just think, what would happen next, or what if this happened to the character we already know? What would happen next? For example, in the story Ham, it's what happens after the wolf falls into the pot of boiling water, and you've got these 3 siblings standing around going, okay, well, now what are we going to do? And one of them is entrepreneurial and the 2 are just sort of lazy SOBs. So that's a siblings come up, motivation comes up, honesty and responsibility come up, and all these things that come up from a what's next in a story that we're familiar with. And I think then you can just run with it.
Definitely. Definitely. And you do it so nicely. So on that note, would you read an excerpt from Swan Suit?
Oh, I'll do more than that. I'm going to read not only an excerpt, I'm going to read the whole story because there's the shortest story in the book. Is that cool?
That's fabulous.
The shortest story in the book. And you know what? When I pick up short story collections, I always read the shortest story in the book. I know the publishers, like we spent a lot of time figuring out the order of the stories in this book and my other one. And, you know, which is the strongest, start off with a bang and finish and bookend with this. And let's put, and you have to, this one goes after that one. But honestly, I pick up a book of short stories. I just read the shortest one first because I don't want to invest in like the longest one if I'm not going to like it. I just want to know right away. So anyways, people can just feel free to read whatever they want. But now I'm going to read you the shortest one. This is called The Maternal Instinct of Witches. One way for a witch to amuse herself when the usual avenues of entertainment have been exhausted is to have a child. Why not? As a rule, witches don't have regular jobs and they don't have friends. They're not interested in physical fitness or tidiness. They don't have hobbies or watch television or enjoy music or travel. And there are only so many spells one can cast. Yes, witches cook, but they never clean up after themselves. They just use the same dirty pots for the next day's meal. There's no garbage or compost to worry about either. If the scraps, peels, rotten ends, bones, and other sharp bits aren't needed, they are given to the cat, whose name is usually Thunder. Poisonous parts are put in jars for safekeeping. Everyone knows having a baby can be very, very good for getting a lady out of a rut, for breaking up routine when life begins to feel same old, same old. Besides, getting pregnant is no big deal for a witch. When she's ready, she simply wraps a piece of thin white satin around the base of one of her skin tags. Oh, there are plenty of dangling little beauty warts to choose from over her eyebrow, between her breasts, in the armpit area. She pulls the ribbon tight, ties a double fisherman's loop, pours herself a glass of vinegar, known among witches to prevent morning sickness, and waits. Within a few hours, the skin tag, at first the size of an engorged tick on a dog, begins to swell and pulsate and swell. Soon it grows to the size of a peanut. 2 tiny dots become visible near the top. These are the eyes. And behind them, under skin like wet rice paper, a wee oyster of a brain. Little flippers appear, the hands and feet, and if you look closely at this growing nugget, you may see what looks like a small black fist in the middle of the body, squeezing and pumping like it's preparing to punch someone's lights out. That's the baby witch's heart. The pregnant witch lies quietly on her bed for the whole next day as her skin tag grows and morphs and grows some more. It's still attached to her body, but now it's kicking and twisting and jerking around. "Whoa there, cowgirl," says the witch. "This one's going to be a handful." Tradition dictates that the blessed mother-to-be wait until the witching hour to give birth. When both hands on her old grandmother clock point straight up, she gives the ends of the white satin ribbon a sharp tug, and with a hiss, a pop, and a crunch, severs the connection between herself and her parasitic offspring. The process is actually quite neat and tidy. After releasing about 1/4 of a cup of minty afterbirth, the hole where the skin tag used to be closes up like a sphincter, and the shiny white ribbon that initiated the pregnancy holds the child's hair up in a cute top knot. The baby witch grows quickly and makes a lot of noise. Of course, the mother witch does not feed it because she's teaching it to be self-sufficient right off the bat. Unlike other children, babies of witches are born with mouths full of teeth as sharp as foxes, pubic hair in all the normal places, the ability to speak 3 or 4 languages, and the urge to flee. But the best part of witch motherhood is watching the youngster try to find its way out of the home. "Ah!" cackles the witch. "Good luck, lassie." For there is no door in the house, and the only windows are unopenable, with panes of shatterproof glass. Everyone knows witches fly up their own chimneys if they ever have to leave the house, but the child doesn't know that yet. The mother witch laughs until she cries as the child crawls and scratches, then climbs, jumps, and even tries to fly to escape. "Oh, she looks like a hen in an elevator," thinks the mother witch, wiping slippery tears off her cheeks. The more desperate the child witch is to get out, the more hilarious it is to watch. This doesn't mean the witch doesn't love her child. Quite the opposite. Love in witches equals novelty plus narcissism, and a frantic child who has the same nose as you offers both. However, in every life, there are difficult decisions to be made. If the child witch doesn't figure out how to escape soon, the mother witch will know it is weak and feeble-minded, and she will roast the little thing in her oven and feed it to the cat, who is now sharpening his claws in mouth-watering anticipation. Oh, don't judge. A mother bird will shove her baby out of a high nest and watch as the terrified creature flails and spins and tries to figure out how to outsmart gravity before thunking into the ground and smashing its itty-bitty birdie bones into smithereens. It's called parenting. If the young witch does figure out how to escape and zips into the fireplace and up the chimney flue, the mother witch will go back to cracking her knuckles, spying on her neighbors and reading spell books. That was fun, she'll say, and then pour herself another glass of vinegar, also known to prevent postpartum depression and empty nest syndrome. Deep down, she'll be of two minds. Partly, she'll be relieved to have her own life back, along with all that free time and privacy, and partly she'll miss the noise. And as the child flies out the chimney, over the rooftops and into the night, she'll be so happy to be free, she'll yank the white ribbon out of her hair and throw it gleefully into the air. It will crackle and flash in the sky. People below will stop what they're doing and look up at the lightning bolt. Only a few will be aware that this is a signal that a child witch has escaped. Most people will chalk it up to a freak storm on an otherwise lovely evening. And a few moments later, the ear-splitting growl of a witch's cat will send shivers up and down the people's spines. It seems thunder sharpened his claws for nothing. Thanks.
That's wonderful. I loved it. So imaginative.
Thank you.
Really
you
well
do
done.
Your shortest story with a bang. The stories are not all so directly fairy tale linked. There are some that are a bit more tangentially. Is that the word? Tangentially?
Sure, it is now.
Thank you. Connected to the fairy tale sort of theme, a bit more contemporary and real.
What sparked the idea for Swan Suit?
I was just writing. I think that I have trouble answering that question because there wasn't one idea. Right. It's just story by story. So, like you said, with images, I'd get one image and be like, oh, I have to explore that in a story. I wonder what would happen. I wonder what would happen if that beautiful bird were able to unzip the suit of feathers that it's wearing and what would be underneath. So that's the question. And then in another story, I wonder what a dick the dad is to send his daughter to spin straw into gold. Who does that to their daughter? Who lets that happen? And I'm going to explore that relationship. And what about the troll? And so it's more story by story than anything that inspired the book. And once I'm like, oh, I've like 12 of these stories, 14 of these stories. I guess that's maybe I should go to see if I can try and get these wrapped into a book. So the book was there was no inspiration for the book. The inspiration was for each story. Yeah.
Nice. How long did it take you to write the full collection? I started
writing these stories as soon as I got a publishing contract for The Little Washer of Sorrows. There was 5 years in between, but I suppose 2 of the years before Swan Suit was published, a year and a half or 2 was sending it out, finding a right home for it for publisher, going through edits, and that process took a while. So I guess in total, the stories in this book were written over 3 or 4 years.
What story in the book Swan Suit challenged you the most to write? What a
good question. I have to look at the table of contents to remind myself. Well, almost every story, the ending challenged me because it's endings that I'll start this. You look around, it's like the arts and crafts projects around my house. Like all the projects, I'm just like, totally. So writing the endings was always a challenge. However, probably the most challenging one, and the one that's the most challenging one in this book, well, on a technical term, was the Pull of Old Rat Creek, because that's made up of documents, letters, transcripts, and the dates on them all had to, it was had to be chronologically correct as far as the actions. So that was a very difficult one to edit and check. Also because I had, there are two dozen different voices in there coming through in the different forms that I'm writing. So that was complicated, but the writing of that one was easy. It was just hard for my editors to go through. And so then they'd ask me questions and I wouldn't know the answer. And that made it complicated, but that was really fun to write. One of the more difficult ones was probably Nasal Cannula. That was difficult because it was exploring some end of life stuff with the father who was sick, and the nasal cannula, that the tube that goes. So my dad was wearing that and carrying an oxygen tank around. So he actually checked. I've written this story. It's inspired. This character is not you, but it's inspired by what you're going through. And I want to know how it feels to be have to, get your oxygen and have to carry around that tank. Right. So he read it and he's like, oh, you don't put the prongs in like that. You put the prongs in like this. So it was a good exploration with him of the things he was going through, but it also made it difficult.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Because you're facing something that, you're going to be facing something even more.
And asking him to elaborate on those feelings was important, but hard. Yeah. Like you said.
Mm-hmm. Well, and really important for him too, because he's giving you an insight into what he's coping with and dealing with, which you're learning more about him in a sense. And then you gain even deeper sense of compassion, which I think also makes you aware of the type of loss that you're going to be left with as well. And
it ended up being quite fun one to write because I gave that character some real power. And it wasn't all just loss of ability, loss of freedom, the disease at the end of your life will fail.
Yes.
So that was kind of fun. And it felt like a bit of a gift.
Nicely done.
Thank you. Can I tell you some?
Oh, yes, please do.
Okay. Oh, well, The Devil and Miss Nora. That's the second story in the book about the devil going into the daycare to try and steal the soul of a toddler is being made into, I had the opportunity to make that into a script. So
that's wonderful. Congratulations. How exciting. That's thrilling.
I'm so stoked to see it. It's going to be performed in Whistler at the Point this August, at the beginning of August at Flagstop Theatre. So that's very exciting. I can't wait to see how they do it. But it was quite challenging to take, no problem. I've already written the story. I can easily adapt it into script form. Not so easy.
Yeah.
Not so easy. What else was challenging? Well, they all had their own, endings. My story, East O, is from the perspective of the last egg that a woman sheds when final phase of menopause. Wow. So, you've got a certain number and they're all in there. And then they're not, because they die or they're shed in some way, or they turn into kids, I suppose. That was really fun and challenging. That took more research than I'm used to figure out correct biological anatomy and processes. But that was super fun. That was inspired. That one was inspired by our own British Columbian Shayna Lambert, that beautiful writer, who in her first short story collection. Or maybe her second, I don't know. One of the stories that I read was from the perspective of a tumor, a breast cancer tumor.
Oh, wow.
And the tumor was communicating with the woman. I was, of course, our bodies talk to us all the time. Can't they be characters? So that's why I wanted to give character to the egg that remained with the woman the longest.
Wonderful. Yeah. I'm kind of jealous. I wish I thought of that. That's awesome.
Well, see, I didn't really think of it. Shayna thought of it first of that, but then, you can go with it. So it's not real.
It's fabulous.
Whether it's inspired or I copied her, it's just a matter of semantics, but I'll just say she inspired me and she's a wonderful writer and I recommend all of her work.
That's wonderful. That's what happens. We don't know where or when inspiration hits us, right?
Exactly.
After you wrote your book, Swan Suit, did you view yourself and the world around you differently? And if so, how?
I viewed my world after I wrote it. I viewed myself as a big famous author. And I viewed myself as just like pretty much basically Margaret Atwood or something. And then it came out, and then it was COVID, and then the whole tour got canceled, and the marketing kind of tanked. And yeah, I'm not a big famous author, but no, not really. Nothing really changed.
What are you working on now?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked that. I've been doing, since January, I've been actually working on scripts. I've been doing some playwriting.
Nice.
I have, like I said, I have the Devil and Miss Nora coming out this summer. And I also wrote 5 scripts for a theater company in Squamish for their Christmas production. So their Christmas show we're calling it the Once Upon a Cold Snap. And it's basically a short story collection on stage of winter plays. And it's going to be so fun. So that's what I've been working on. I've kind of just wrapped that up. They're in the process right now, or they're somewhere on the line of auditioning and reading these plays to get started. This August one is obviously well underway, but the Christmas ones are talking the costumes and the stages and setting. And so that's been really exciting to be involved in. So I put a few things on hold in January when that opportunity came up to do the playwriting. And I'm glad that I did, because now I've gotten back to just this past week. I have 2 major projects, and I'm trying to decide which one to devote most of my energy to. One is more of a memoir type, longer work. And the other one is a really fun YA kind of romp through the woods.
Nice. What does your writing day look like? Because you seem quite busy with a lot of things. So what's the typical day in writing like for you?
I don't really think there's much such thing as a typical day in writing for me, because it's my schedule's just off the hook sometimes. I am a night owl, so I do most of my writing in the evening and late. I like to not have to end it. And sometimes I find if I write in the morning, I'm always looking at the clock. I have to go to, when I'm my teaching doesn't start early in the morning. So I do have some freedom. I usually don't start until 10 or 11. But so I could write in the morning, but I find that's my busy time when I organize, the emails and anything marketing wise, stuff like that. And then in the evening, it's like, okay, I could write till midnight. I could write till 2. I don't have to do anything else. This is it. This is all I have to do right now. So it's like this big free expanse. So I do get a lot of my ideas and things down late at night. Yeah, I would say that's what my typical, but also if I'm not feeling it, I will just read. Read. And I feel that that's as important as writing sometimes. Yeah. Okay. You can't really become a writer just by reading. You have to actually do the work, but getting inspired by other authors who I love, or, short stories, whether it's, I love the short stories that are in the New Yorker and Harper's and the magazines. Love that. And I think it's just a lovely journey to start to explore those as much as you can. Like, honestly, sometimes if I'm really stuck, I will take one of the stories that I love and I will retype it, or I will rewrite it by hand to get the language, nice, to get the flow, to get the, like someone like Angela Carter or Heather O'Neill, just write some of their sentences and feel that, right?
Wait, that's really lovely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And like, if there's somebody who I really admire, and it's like, oh my gosh, this Neil Gaiman too, his short stories, beautiful, or George Saunders and Karen Russell, you take some of their stories and just write them down, like word for word, completely plagiarize them, write them. And then it's like, okay, I'm in this flow of the language, and then you turn it off and you go back to your own ideas. And sometimes that flow, you're making it your own style once you get there, but we do imitate the people who we really admire a lot, and we internalize those styles, and then they come out through the filter of our own personalities and talents. But I feel it's really important to expose yourself and to explore and to just dig into other writers who are wonderful. So
nice. Katherine, thank you for sharing a bit of you with our listeners. I really enjoyed our conversation, and you had me bewitched when you were reading from Swan Suit. Thank you for coming on A Writer's Life.
Thanks so much for your time and all your brilliant questions. I'm glad to be part of it.
That was Katherine Fawcett, the author of Swan Suit and The Little Washer of Sorrows. For more information on her and where to purchase her books, please check the links below. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to A Writer's Life? And if you want more information about myself and my novel Secrets in the Shadows, visit my website at www.hygabome.ca. For a kinder world, take care of each other. Is there anything else you would like to cover?
Let me see. No, you've asked me so many good questions.
This conversation with Katherine Fawcett was recorded last July.